Hello everyone. On behalf of Rotary District 3131 and Rotary Club of Pune Metro, I welcome you all for today's session of the webinar series Say No, Bolo Na. This webinar series on prevention of addiction has been initiated to create awareness about the ill effects of various addictions amongst today's young generation, and also to provide a helping hand and a boost of confidence to overcome to those who may have unfortunately found themselves in the throes of this grave global problem. We have with us today the students of College of Engineering Pune, students of School of Fashion Technology of Maharshi Karve Stri Shikshan Sanstha, and our Rotrack clubs, Rotrack Club of MCOE Electrical Metro and Rotrack Club of MES IMCC. I extend a warm welcome to all of you. Today's session covers the issue of drug addiction, and we have with us Dr. Ashish Deshpande to help us gain insights into the issue and understand the gravity and the way forward. Dr. Ashish Deshpande is a Mumbai-based practicing psychiatrist since 1996. A life fellow of Indian Psychiatric Society, he was also the president of Bombay Psychiatric Society in 2015 and has been closely associated with the Directorate of Mental Health. He has been working closely in the field of School of Mental Health, de-addiction, gender desensitization and age awareness, and has been recipient of various illustrious scholarships. He has presented research papers at international summits and has authored various educational and research documents. He travels extensively for Alcoholic Anonymous, working at grassroots levels in the interiors and the remotest places across the country. An expert in de-addiction medicine, he is creating awareness and training physicians and young professionals, as well as conducting lectures for corporates, government and regulatory bodies. He is associated with several NGOs and organizations to work towards de-addiction and is currently familiarizing teachers and educationists in the role of mental health in education and learning. He has been invited at various national and international forums for delivering lectures and has conducted a number of workshops on substance abuse and other mental health issues. Dr. Ashish, I heartily welcome you and your team members, Arundhati and Neha, and I am glad you could join us today. I also extend a warm welcome to Abhijit, who is closely associated with Dr. Ashish for some years now. Abhijit is an ex-addict and has successfully battled and overcome his addiction problem with help from Dr. Ashish. Coming from a good family and a pleasant lifestyle, Abhijit found himself in the midst of this dreadful addiction problem that seemed only to spiral downwards. With timely help and multiple rehabs, Abhijit has been able to come out of addiction since 4 years now and presently does a lot of work in creating awareness about drug addiction and its ill effects. He works closely with Narcotics Anonymous, and he would be sharing with us today his experiences and thoughts as we proceed ahead in today's conversation. I, Rotarian Amita Nene, would be hosting the session today along with our Annette Gargi Chaudhary, who is with us today as representative of the young generation, and she would be presenting to us questions that bother the young generation today around the drug addiction issue. At the start of today's session, I would now like to invite Abhijit to start with giving us a brief insight into his experiences with drug addiction. Abhijit.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Abhijit and I'm a grateful recovering addict. It is entirely by God's grace today and the wonderful people and friends I have met in my journey that I'm clean from drug addiction today. I'm very grateful for being here today and this wonderful opportunity presented to me. To tell you very briefly about my past, right? I used drugs for 18 years And during this period, all areas of my life were completely destroyed. Just to give you an idea, a brief idea about the kind of damages that have happened to me, that I have suffered. I've quit my education early due to my disease of addiction. I'm not formally educated. That's a price I had to pay. I suffered a motorcycle accident when I was riding under the influence of drugs, and as a result, I've had to undergo multiple operations. I suffer from a permanent minor disability, and this is a lifetime consequence which I have to bear. I have two failed marriages. I have one 9-year-old son whom I can only meet at the most 3 times a month. Um, the business which my family members had started for me, I did not pay any attention to it. Obviously, all of my time was invested and wasted in buying drugs and using them and trying to hide my using from society. So yes, the business my family had started for me, I ran it into the ground and I had to sell it at a huge loss. And it is after that time that things really started going bad. I reached a point eventually when even if I used a small quantity of drugs, I started going crazy, right? I used to get bouts of psychosis. I used to get disconnected from reality. So I've had to take shocks to the head to come back into reality. There was a time a few years ago when I had to take 25 tablets of psychiatric medicines every single day to stay in reality. I've been to rehab 7 times. I've spent a total of 36 months in various rehabilitational institutions, and I still could not stop using drugs. So it is with the deepest gratitude and it is with a whole lot of many positive emotions that I'm very happy to inform all of you that today I'm clean and I'm away from any and all drugs for more than 4 years, 8 months, and today is the ninth day actually. And this, for me, is an absolute miracle because things were so bad. And the problem was not that I did not want to stop anymore. The difficult thing and the exceptionally difficult thing for me was that I had come to an absolute conclusion that I cannot use drugs anymore, and had accepted this as well. Even though the reason I had to repeatedly go to rehab time and again, and I was so broken as a result, is that my willingness to stop was not enough. I was hopelessly trapped in this situation. In hindsight, in retrospect, I realized the nature of the problem. The nature of my malady was that it stopping was never my problem. I've been able to stop before, be it for a minute, be it for an hour, be it for a day, a week, a month, even several months on my own. I have been able to stop, but I could not stay stopped. Some things used to happen, some incidents or some events, or I was exposed to certain situations, after which I used to pick up drugs again with the same disastrous consequences, loads of medicines, at times shocks to the head, as I mentioned before. And if I was lucky, 6 months in rehab. In retrospect, I'm lucky. The first thing I said when I was introducing myself is I'm Abhijit and I'm a grateful recovering addict. I'm a grateful addict because for every one of me, there are hundreds like me who can never make it out. That is why I feel blessed. I'm lucky. I thank you all for this wonderful opportunity today to come here and share my experiences with the hope that we can together carry a message that recovery is possible.
It was really an eye opener to all of us here to know, what you have gone through. A couple of questions that come to our mind. I will initiate with a question, and I think Gargi will also have a couple of questions to ask you from the young generation point of view. How did you get attracted to drugs? How did you go to drug addiction in the first place?
Okay, that's cool. That takes me down memory lane. Not necessarily pleasant memories, but yes. If I may be allowed, I'm not only going to share my own personal experiences, but since this is a broad question, I'm going to try to be inclusive and include the experiences of a lot of my friends who are now in recovery from addiction,
Certainly, certainly.
various age groups, right? So there can be several reasons why I and others like me got attracted to drugs in the first place. There was peer pressure was a huge factor for me. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be with the happening crowd. Yeah, the I don't know what you guys call them, the in bunch, right? I wanted to be cool, and I associated using drugs with being cool, right? There was also a lot of curiosity towards using drugs because there's so much glorification about using in music, in movies, and the media. There's obviously a vast amount of misinformation online, and I got sucked into it. I've had friends who told me that they just wanted to rebel and they thought that using drugs was the right way of rebelling against anything and everything, including at home, against society in general, and things thereof. I know for a fact that a lot of my friends who are in recovery today have turned to using drugs as a coping mechanism for dealing with hurt, trouble, traumatic childhood experiences, and or any and all negative emotions, as a coping mechanism. So these were the reasons I and others like me have been attracted to using drugs.
Okay, okay. Gargi, you wanted to ask a couple of questions to Abhijit.
Yeah,
Can you?
yeah, I will go ahead. Yeah, my question to you is how did you cope with this physically and mentally as well? I mean, it must have taken a toll on your mental health. So, can you walk us through the entire situation?
Certainly, I'll try my best.
Yeah.
How The question was, how did I cope up with it mentally, with being an addict? Actually, Gargi, no, looking back in hindsight, with the gift of hindsight, I must admit that I did not admit that I was an addict for a long time after I had been addicted. It was very evident to me, to others in my life. That includes one of my ex-wives, my parents, my friends, people who I was working with. Everybody had understood that Nikhil has a problem. Now, perhaps those who I worked with and even my parents did not know I was using drugs, but my wife, my first ex-wife, and my friends, they knew that Nikhil has a problem and Nikhil's problem is drugs. But I was completely in denial, right? I was not ready to admit that I'm an addict, that I have a problem with drugs. I used to turn to drugs and think that drugs were what helped me to cope with all difficult situations in my life. Just to give you an example, how much denial I was in, right? I used to think that my wife wants to cheat on me, that my mother only loves my brother and not me so much, that my father was only interested in making money, didn't give a damn about the kids, right? And that those who worked for me wanted to steal from me. My boss prefers my colleague over me. My friends are not true friends. They try to harm me behind my back. And everything in life was bad, but drugs were one thing that helped me to deal with all of this. It was much later that I had to admit that drugs were a problem. But that didn't mean I became immediately ready to seek for a solution, right? Right. My emotional reaction was that okay, I'm addicted. But I was so dependent on drugs that I used to say that I might be addicted, but this is my way of life. I will not want to quit. This is my life. I will do whatever I want to do with it. I will use drugs until the day I die. That was my my reality, my story, my truth.
Okay. Abhijit, just before we move ahead, one last small question that I just wanted to put across to you. Uh, how was the support from your friends and family, who were not into this addiction, and how was their support to you in this whole process of recovery and rehab?
See, they always loved me unconditionally, man. The sad thing is that it's not only Abhijit, who's paid the price for Abhijit's disease of addiction. My family, my friends, my my colleagues, people who work for me, my customers, all of us have paid the price at some level. The problem was that if I used drugs and I did some antics, created some tamasha on the street, nobody on the street would have tolerated me, right? It's my family and those who really loved me, my family, friends, my parents, my wife, my ex-wife. It's they who forgave me, yeah, again and again, and it is those people whom I hurt the most because I was messing up, abusing their trust, and relapsing again and again and again. They tried their best. They were as unconditional with their love and all of their resources as any human can possibly hope for. And I'm grateful for all of that today. But then my reality was anyone who used to come in between me and my drugs became my enemy. And I have not, I've done many things which I'm not proud about. Just
Right.
the scene.
Right. No, Abhijit, it is really courageous of you to come here today and, be sharing all your thoughts so candidly and so well. Your conviction and determination through your entire journey in overcoming this problem, we can see that it's totally remarkable. Thank you so much for, giving us this insight today. We would now be moving ahead to have a conversation with Dr. Ashish Deshpande. So I would like to direct my first question to you, Doctor. Um, Most of us have got glimpses of drug abuse and associated problems in India's young population through movies like Udta Punjab, or even the more recent incidents, following the Sushant Singh Rajput case. So we would really like to understand from you, doctor, what exactly is drug addiction and whether usage of drugs and drug abuse is really so rampant in India.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here. And I'll try to answer the question in two parts. Okay, is the drug addiction rampant in India? The answer is yes. Unfortunately, the answer is yes. For the simple reason that, and it's not something which is a recent onset, okay, right? From olden days, different kinds of drugs were used. You know that opium or poppy seeds are still given to kids when they have loose motions or stomachache all over the country. Cannabis are being used by religious people for spiritual enlightenment awareness, heightened sense of spirituality. So genetics rules the roost, and depending upon the substance, the psychoactive or addictive substance that is being used, for each substance there is a different vulnerability. So for instance, 3 to 8% of people who consume alcohol are likely to become alcohol dependent, or maybe about 8 to 12% of people who consume cannabis are likely to get hooked on to cannabis, or are likely to have some social damage associated with cannabis. Heroin being the biggest culprit, and it can cause a lot of damage, 30%. Nicotine is 35%. It is very much similar to diabetes. Everybody who consumes sugar doesn't have diabetes. There is a restricted 8 to 15% of people who consume sugar are likely to have some problems in their genes which will make their pancreas work differently. And for a long time, people were trying to find out why people behave. Some people behave abnormally, obnoxiously when they consume the psychoactive substance. Medical science did not know how brain works, and that's the reason why it was called the Demon's Act, or it was called some kind of an evil spirit entering a person. Now we know that well, it is nothing else but a disease of the brain, and medical sciences have tried to understand this disease. And what I'm going to show you now is a few slides which will make you understand how that disease develops. So, as I was saying that it's a disease, and these are the addictive substances. And what on the left side is internet. The second molecule that looks like a dog is a slave to the person and then becomes a master. That is alcohol for you, alcohol. Right side is cannabis, then there is nicotine, and there is heroin. So addiction is not restricted only to chemicals, but even to experiences. So what are these experiences and chemicals? What do they do to the brain? These all addictive substances or experiences in common share one particular property, and that property is that they vigorously act on the reward circuit. So when I was in school, I stood first in the classroom. I was given a reward, and that made me work harder on my academic subjects. So this is a reward which maintains or sustains motivation. And the whole world works on rewards and the motivation theory. So these chemical substances or experiences, they act vigorously on the reward circuits of the brain and their connections in thinking brain, feeling brain, and memory areas. And because of that, you can say that they hijack, because of their potency to give pleasure, they hijack the thinking, feeling, and behavior areas, and they start dictating terms. On the right-hand side, you will see all these chemical substances that are known to man, which are addictive. And if you see, on the horizontal axis, we have physical harm. On the vertical axis, there is the dependence harm or the compulsive consumption harm. And you will see that heroin tops the label. It's most physically harmful as well as dependence causing. And if you see alcohol is somewhere in between. And if you see nicotine, tobacco, it is one of the most addictive substances and it causes physical harm also. So these are the chemicals. How do they exactly act? This is a picture that most of the cricket fans would remember. This is the famous Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai. And it is said that the functional areas of the brain, if you roll them into a bread or a chapati, then it is likely to cover, the functional areas are likely to cover one ground space of Wankhede Stadium. So those many functions are attributed to the brain areas. And all these functional areas are connected with wires. So there is electrical impulses carrying from each area to the other. And all these areas being interconnected, they know exactly. So right hand knows what the left hand is doing. And we have so many other abilities in the brain which we do not consciously think about, but they are being processed. Now, just like in diabetes, we know that there is a specific area next to the intestines called pancreas and islets of Langerhans which are affected. In the brain, there is one particular area which is right above the ears and behind the eyes. So that area is the area which gradually gets affected differently. We call it nucleus accumbens and ventral tegmental area, and its connections all over the brain. So as I said, that there is certain area of the brain and then there are connections in the brain that start getting affected. When they are affected, what exactly happens? This is an electron microscope picture of two nerves interacting with each other. Now we know that when an electrician comes to our house and he plays with the wires, there is an insulating plastic material and inside there is a metal wire. So nerves are like metal wires, and those metal wires, if they need to be connected in the house, they need to be electrically entwined. But physically, when it happens in the brain, there is no connection. There is a space, and that space is called the synapse. So the white channel that you see in between the top portion of the picture and the lower portion is called the synapse. The yellow circles that you see are the vesicles, and the yellow dots inside are the neurotransmitters or the chemicals which, when released in the synapse, they swim, float, run, and go to the next neuron. The flagellated structures that are receiving those neurotransmitters on the other side of the river, these are called receptors because they receive the chemical. And once the neurotransmitter flies, swims, floats from one side and reaches the second side, the receptors interact and a chemical reaction happens, and that's how the next neuron gets stimulated. Now, in our brain, everything happens at the synaptic level. Now, to give you an example, our brain is like a ban muthi. So the fingers, the red portion that I have shown, is the thinking brain. Then the next portion is the emotional brain. The yellow part is the brain stem, which controls our breathing rate, our heart rate, etc. The nails are the communication start areas. So when they are closely associated with thinking brain and emotional brain and the brain stem, then the brain is in health. Psychoactive substances or chemical substances which can have the potential to make a person addicted to them gradually starts opening the palm, as I have shown on the right side. So from Bandh Muthi, gradually the muthi starts opening and then the hand opens up. Now when the hands open up, the nails are far away from the thinking area, feeling area and the brainstem. So what happens then is that there is no communication between the thinking area and the feeling area. And once that happens, the person is likely to be out of control. Now in Katha Upanishads, the concept of mind is depicted in this picture. So a person riding the chariot is the conscience. Okay, he is aware what is happening. Then the higher intellect or buddhi, as it is called, is the sarthi. The reins in the hands of the intellect is called the mind. And this akla, as it is called in Urdu, is the one which reins the senses, the indriyas. Now, indriyas or the senses are pleasure seeking or hedonists. All of us are hedonistic beings. We want happiness in our minds. But those senses of happiness have certain boundaries and limitations. The addictive substances have the potential to remove these indriyas from the binds of the mind. So what happens is that with addictive substances, the reins become weak. Lagan jo hai, wo weak ho jata hai. And that is the reason why the horses start ruling the roost. And they run after whatever they want to achieve. They have learned to seek pleasure through the drug of their choice. The brain mechanisms of alternating pleasures are completely stopped, and the person understands that seeking pleasure is possible only through occasional consumption. As the occasional consumption starts increasing in frequency, there are certain changes that happen wherein the person now needs to consume to avoid discomfort. And after consuming, he experiences pleasure. So there is punishment and reward together. And that is when the person gets obsessed with consumption. So he starts thinking about when is he going to get his next dose of pleasure. He starts scheming and planning for it. He starts choosing friends. He will try to get the next consumption just to feel normal. He would say that I am not able to work because I am not getting that drug. He would have discomfort, irritability, mood swings, anything in order to feel normal. The drugs start making him feel complete. Now, the demand for the drug is no longer external, it has become internal. Now, this is compulsive consumption. With increasing frequency of the drug being exposed to the brain, the reins keep on becoming weaker and the person transcends from occasional consumption to obsessed consumption to compulsive consumption. So this is what happens, and the person experiences, or the family members experience, that the amount is not in control, the amount of consumption time is not in control. The person starts regularly consuming drugs, and he tries to give up but fails to give up. He starts scheming and planning to procure the drugs because he has craving, which is extremely discomforting, and he keeps relapsing. He thinks so much about his drugs that his social obligations gradually start becoming unfulfilled. And the unfulfillment of obligations is directly attributed to the substance use. He starts taking unnecessary risks against the physical damage, against the psychological problems, against the social problems that the drugs are creating. The person keeps on consuming, deserting all kinds of rationality. His amount starts increasing, his withdrawals start becoming severe. There are multiple substances known. Alcohol is one of them, caffeine is another, cannabis is there, hallucinogenic drugs like shrooms or mushrooms are there, inhalants or solvents are there, opium is there, sedatives like sleeping pills are there, stimulants like methylphenidate is there, and of course our tobacco is there. And each one of them has a different potency to cause physical harm and lead to physical dependence. So this is the neurochemistry behind the disease of addiction. So what I want to say is that an addict is not a bad person. He is not a mad person, but he is a sick person. He needs treatment. You cannot discard an addict for his behavior. What you need to do is give him a helping hand, and that is where the health professionals need to be consulted.
Very aptly and engagingly explained by you, doctor. Now we know quite a bit about how a person gets totally entangled into drug addictions once he has got introduced to it. So my next question to you is about is there a specific age group in which a person is most vulnerable to become attracted or addicted to drugs, or is there a possibility that at a specific age it is more likely that a person gets attracted to it, and along with that, how does one get an inkling that someone around you could be headed towards drug addiction? How can somebody, how can a general person understand that? And Abhijit also mentioned when he was talking about his experiences that he was in denial. So we would also want to know what exactly does it mean by being in denial?
Sure, I will try to explain. If I forget a question, you just let me know which for
Surely, sure.
The first question was, is there an age group where the addiction is more likely to happen?
Vulnerability, yeah.
And there is a age limit, and it has been proved beyond doubt statistically that if a person consumes a particular psychoactive substance before the age of 21, then the chances of his getting involved in some social damage associated with that substance in the adulthood is 5 times more. Okay, it has been statistically proven. So that is the reason why there are age prohibitions. Many a times people argue कि वोट देने के लिए 18 साल और शराब पीने के लिए 21 साल. Okay, there is a biological reason for that. Okay, it's not just random point, cutoff point that we have advocated. Surprisingly, Plato used to consume symposia, and the meaning of the word symposia is teaching young youth to consume alcohol. Okay, now we use the word symposia in a totally different context, but that was the meaning of the word symposia. And he concluded from his observations that 21 was the age at which people should be allowed to consume alcohol, and they need to be trained about how to drink. So why does it happen? Because we call them formative years, and at that time what is happening is, through the adolescent, the decision making prowess of the brain is shifting from emotional cortex to thinking cortex. So that transition is happening at that time, and this transition is associated with multiple neuronal circuits getting rearranged. Now, any kind of interference through chemicals or through experiences at that time is likely to damage these neuronal circuits and make them weak. And if they become weak, then obviously the conversion into decision making, into thinking brain, becomes difficult. It is hindered. Okay, so then the thoughtful decisions don't happen. Okay, so that is the reason why those age prohibitions are there. So if you consume, that doesn't mean that after, if you consume after the age of, you will never get addicted or become, but likelihood of social damage associated with that substance is 5 times less. Okay, so that should answer your first question. Okay, what was the second question you asked?
It was about, how does a common person get insight into somebody around him being attracted towards drug addiction, and what exactly is denial, because the person who is getting into addiction is going to be in denial. So what does exactly that mean?
See, what happens is that all of us consume sugar, right? And how many of you consume sugar because you want to be a diabetic one day? Nobody. Nobody wishes to become diabetic. Okay. Similarly, no addict or an alcoholic wishes to become an addict or an alcoholic in his later life. He also wants to consume alcohol or any of these drugs recreationally. He wants to enjoy. He wants to make maximum out of his life. Okay, that is his experience. That is his need. Okay. So when he is consuming, okay, he just like, we don't know whether the diabetic processes have happened in my life, my body or not. Okay. One fine day when I go for blood test, I will find that, okay, I've got diabetes. Okay. Similarly, that laboratory test that is available for diabetes is not available for addiction as of now. Okay. And that is where everything goes wrong. The second thing is that these chemicals in the brain, they are associated with multiple neuronal systems. And you would be surprised to know that the cannabis system that you talk about, the cannabis system is there inside in the brain also. There are cannabinoid receptors, okay, and they are the ones which are triggered by cannabis, okay. Now, alcohol is called as the mother of all drugs because it acts on the cannabinoid receptors, it acts on the opioid receptors, it acts on the benzodiazepine receptors, and it acts on the glutamate receptors. So all the other drugs which act on the brain, they act on specific receptors, whereas alcohol acts on all the receptors. The point that I want to make is that these receptors are manipulated in such a way that the person consciously, the Atman, doesn't know that these changes are happening. The intelligence feels that he is in control. He doesn't know that the reins that I was talking about are becoming weaker and weaker by the day. The horses feel that, okay, it is youthful enthusiasm and they are having a good ride and people are just jealous about them. Okay, people are unnecessarily trying to restrict them, or they have an intergeneration conflict. Okay. So because of that, their perception of their consumption and the society's perception of the consumption is very different. The cannabinoid system keeps stimulating their brains, and gives them a sense of control and grandiosity. They feel they are on the top of the world. You've seen that after consuming psychoactive substances, people go into a heroic mood. It was thought that in the olden days, people used to go at war with cannabis, okay, or alcohol consumption. So the delusional grandiosity or sense of well-being that these chemicals are able to create, okay, does not let them understand that they are harming themselves. And this particular inability to have genuine awareness of having a problem is called denial. And it is completely manipulated through chemistry. And it is the cannabinoid chemistry which gets lifted up without any supporting structures. And because of that, there is super confidence with no supporting abilities. So that is where the denial becomes very difficult for people to understand. The super confidence, the delusional grandiosity is in general terms, it is baseless. And the people don't know how a person can be so boastful. And that is where the conflicts start happening between the close family members. The person's increasing frequency, the preoccupation that they show, the manipulative behaviors that they show, the changes that they have in their behavioral pattern on a day-to-day basis, they are clear indicators for the family members that something is wrong. But unfortunately, the person himself does not understand. Many a times you have to wait till the rock bottom, where the person hits bottom so hard, either biological or psychological or social. Till that time, he just doesn't understand that there is something grossly wrong with his systems. So that is the reason why this denial extends till the time he reaches rock bottom. But by the time the rock bottom has hit, there are so many things that youthful person has lost. He's in his mid-30s and he has lost, just like Abhijit, he has lost his son, his 2 marriages, and so many hours, his educational career. He's still struggling with what he wants to do in life. It is like a waste of a life. And that is where the pain comes.
Right. The next thing that I wanted to ask you is that, there is typical vulnerability in late teens and, with an early adult where friends are their lifeline. Gargi would like to ask a question from this point of view. Gargi?
So speaking for my generation, we are a generation that can go to any extent to just get accepted by friends or to have a sense of belonging. So can you just give us some insights on how to deal with peer pressure or influence of friends?
Yeah, I know this is something that, Gargi, I would like to ask you a question. How many friends do you have?
I have 10 to 15 close friends, and then there is this another circle.
Yeah. So of those close friends, how many consume drugs?
Fortunately, not a single person.
And how many people do you know who consume drugs?
I know 2 or 3 of them.
Out of how many? 100, 200, 300?
Yeah.
But there are forces in the society which make you believe that every other person in the society is consuming drugs. Okay. So
Yeah.
there is a pressure to sell drugs. Okay. You remember that drugs don't sell just because an addict wants it. Okay. People sell drugs because they have vested interest in it. So that the drug pusher, the drug peddler, the politicians, the administrators, the policymakers, everybody, okay, they have their, and not everybody, but few of them, okay, belonging to this system have their vested interest. And it helps them or their cause to make a perception that it's okay to consume. In fact, every living person consumes, their business margins increase. Okay, so they are continuously at it and they will talk about it vociferously. Okay, but we who probably do not have such high regard for drugs, okay, we will never talk about it. We will say, okay, I don't care, I don't consume. But it is high time that we also talk about it. The reason is that I might not have consumed alcohol, but I might be walking on a street and somebody who is drunken and driving, he might hit me and I might get killed. Okay, so it is not necessary to consume drugs, okay, to get affected by them. You would be surprised that in Bombay Municipal Corporation, 80% of medical emergencies happening at every night, okay, are associated with substance use some way or the other. We are paying taxes for that. Right? So we have a right to decide what policies we should have about substance use in the society. Am I for bans? No, I'm not for bans. Okay, because bans don't work. Okay, we have to live in a practical world and real world. So I'm not for bans. Okay, but evidence-based interventions need to be placed in the society in order to address this issue. And one of the issue is that the younger generation has been sold this particular idea that to consume drugs is the in thing. is the done thing, is a regular thing. Otherwise, you are a nerd.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to achieve something, you need to consume drugs. Okay. In each profession, if you find out how many achievers are there and how many of them consume drugs, okay, you will get your own numbers, okay, and you will understand that this is a myth that is being circulated.
Doctor, one question for you. Now that we have understood that there is a large amount of population, young population, who is either already into drug addiction or who is very vulnerable to get into drug addiction, what is the role of professionals like you in guiding or helping these people who are already there or creating awareness about drug addiction, and what should role of maybe the parents or near ones also be in recovery and rehabilitation of a drug addiction patient?
See, I think the role of health professionals is very, very clearly demarcated. Okay, and that it's a disease and it needs treatment. Okay, unfortunately, it is seen as a character difficulty or some kind of an evil behavior. So there are lots of myths about them, and the person is punished, and there are criminal behavior interactions that happen. The person is targeted, he might be driven out of the house. um, the social support system that the person has becomes very weak. So somewhere the mental health professionals or the physical health professionals also were not aware for a long time about this disease. Even now, physical health workers many a times feel that it's not a disease but a character defect or a behavioral problem or problem of willpower. Okay? So somewhere the awareness of this being a disease needs to reach out to health professionals. The second thing is that the health professionals usually feel that they are the ones who give wellness. Okay, they are selling wellness. Okay? But in this case, one needs to understand that it's a complex social problem. It's a public health concern. One of the person, just like coronavirus, one person has an infection, but the spreading happens because of population density and not ready to wear a mask or follow the physical distance hygiene, etc., etc. So just like polio requires vaccination, these are social issues which are associated, which translate into a medical problem. Okay? So similarly, in addiction also, there are social issues that are associated. And those social issues are associated, are about the myths about alcohol. They increase sexual potency, they give say some kind of a masculinity, or they help increase your creativity. So all these things are circulated in the society. Some examples, okay, which are given that, okay, particular person was consuming drugs and he created so much of good music or so much of good paintings. Okay, so these are isolated incidences which are thrown at you because you don't know others. You accept them as a norm. Okay, so one has to be rational and try to get together as health professionals to give the facts to the young population. Just the way I told Gargi that out of so many people she knows, only 2 people she feels probably are taking drugs. So that means other 98, out of 100, 98 are not even venturing into those areas. So what is a norm? Norm is not taking drugs and still be productive in life and creative in life. Okay? So this is something that and in addiction, there is something called preventive paradox. Now, what is preventive paradox? Is that just like cancer, when it goes into the terminal stage, the recovery rates are bound to be less. Similarly, if in addiction, if you catch an addict early, then the chances of recovery are more than 80%. But in the last stages, the chances of recovery go down to less than 10%. So catching an addict early is extremely important. Helping an addict early is extremely important. So where is that likely to happen? That is likely to happen in schools, colleges, educational campuses. That is our only bet, because there the youth is going to come. So our educational institutes have to not give only education, but we have to make people civil and healthy in order to come and be a responsible citizen of the country. So that is the reason why this is an equal opportunity for health professionals and academicians or educationists to work together for the future of the country. So that is the role of health professionals, that having understood the way the addiction develops in the society, we have to counter the pressures that the selling industry is exerting on our community. So that is the role of health professionals, I feel, is probably for the future.
What roles can an institution like Rotary, along with our younger counterparts, that is Rotaract clubs, what roles can we play in supporting prevention of addictions in our society?
I'm very happy to announce that in India, Rotary Action Group Against Addiction Prevention has been formed. And since 2017, it has been done internationally, and Rotary India has taken a lead. And Rotary India is wanting to take up the cause of addiction in the country, just like they did take the cause of polio vaccination and literacy mission. They want to take this cause as a forefront, as a thrust area, which they have taken, and the work is going on. The project is called De-Addiction Connect, and where the Rotarians would help the communities to come together. In the communities, I mean, the health professionals will be brought together, the academicians would be brought together, the government mechanisms would be brought together, and overall, everybody who is like-minded and understands the concerns regarding this public health concern, they get a platform to voice their concerns and put up their thought and action against the menace of substance use in the societies. So we are looking forward to working with RAGA-P India, and the project is De-Addiction Connect, and not only the Rotary, but the Rotaract is enthusiastically involved in it, because I'm sure people know that young kids interact better with enthusiastic people, young people, rather than people like us. So yes, we depend on Rotaract a lot. And of course, Inner Wheel also we would like to interact with, because many a times these kids who are going through the addiction, they require that motherly love. So we want the whole community to take charge of the addiction issue in the country.
I guess we have got some very valuable information on drug addiction issue from today's session. Your insights, Doctor, have been very enlightening to all our viewers and listeners, and we certainly are working towards a more aware and responsible generation, and also equipped with necessary understanding on the issues of addiction in the long run with the help of webinar series like these. I want to invite Abhijit now for giving us a quick message about the different kind of support groups that people can reach out to in case of drug addiction.
Thank you, Amita ma'am. So I had a huge struggle in coming out of the mess I was in. I got the correct message of recovery the 7th time I was in rehab. It's only due to Dr. Ashish Deshpande. I said I was taking 175 tablets a week of psychiatric medicines. Today I take one tablet every 8 days, and it's only because of Dr. Ashish Deshpande. Narcotics Anonymous is a fellowship where I need to go to keep my disease stopped, to stay in recovery. So to tell simply, it was, I got the message of recovery. Dr. Ashish gave me disease education and medical treatment, and to stay in recovery, I need to go to Narcotics Anonymous. I'm an NA member. I'm not representing Narcotics Anonymous officially in any manner. Narcotics Anonymous is a non-profit global fellowship of addicts who help each other to stay clean. It's a completely free program. We are fully financially self-supporting. It's available in 147 countries and in India as well. One last thing Dr. Ashish was telling about Youth, early prevention or early treatment is the best. I have seen in Narcotics Anonymous, young addicts come in who barely believe they might have a problem. And Narcotics Anonymous has helped raise their rock bottom to the point where they are now in recovery. That's all I wanted to say at this point. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
And before we close, Doctor, I would want to ask you if you would like to give any short takeaway message for all our viewers today.
The only thing that I can tell you is that if there is anybody in the audience who has had an exposure to the addictive substances, or if any one of you knows that there is somebody who is suffering from this deadly disease, I call it Maharog. Now Kushta Rog or leprosy is no longer a Maharog. There is a medicine available. I believe that addiction is going to be the next Maharog. Remember that it's not your fault. It is the fault of the society that we have left for you. And in this, don't hesitate to take help. Don't suffer alone. We are there to help. As Abhijit said, Narcotic Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous is there to help you take care of you. The mental health professionals don't have a stigma about it. Mental health is for your own good. Don't fall prey to the myths that are circulated about mental health, but certainly don't trust the beliefs that are circulated about drugs. It is just a disease, and we all together can fight it and be victorious. So all the best, and be safe and take care.
Thank you, Doctor. That was a really thoughtful and deep message indeed. And your words will remain carved in our minds going ahead, no doubt about it. On behalf of all the organizers and the viewers, Dr. Ashish, I would like to thank you profusely for your valuable time and your priceless insights as well. Thank you, Abhijit, for joining us today, showing so much courage and opening your heart to us, sharing your candid experiences and your journey to overcome addiction. Thank you so much for that. It will certainly provide a perspective of hope and faith to all our audiences. Thank you, Arundhati and Neha, for all your back-end support and all through the interactions with Shilpa. I thank all our partner institutions, their students, Rotarians, Rotractors, my co-host Gargi for representing the young generation, and all our viewers for being part of our prevention of addiction mission. In addition to the apt tagline of our webinar series, Say No, Bolo Na, I would add one for closing today's session, that is, say no to drugs and say yes to life. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.